Nice to see you.
This is the first time I've ever done an interview with essentially a hologram. I don't know how many of you were expecting Bryan to be here in person. Let's have a show of hands. Who knows who Bryan Johnson is, first of all? Lots of Bryan fans here. And how many people expected him to be here in person? A fair number of people, as did I. I think Bryan is going to have a really good reason for why he's not here, and I think it's going to connect in a really interesting way with what we just heard from Scott about the microbiome and about anti-aging. So with little other introduction, why don't we find out why Bryan has decided to only join us in a virtual incarnation?
Yeah, I thought the intro was really interesting. The thought experiment that I find most compelling related to our time right now is if we transport ourselves to the 25th century and we imagine what they might be talking about that we did in the early 21st century, they might observe that what we did that allowed intelligent existence to thrive in the galaxy was we figured out it was the moment in time where we trained our attention on don't die, where death was always inevitable as a species, but now with the creation of superintelligence, that we no longer know how long and how well we can live. And to me, if you look at the 20th century, the singular unifying thing that could be the rallying cry for us would be don't die. Don't die individually, don't kill each other, don't destroy the planet, and build safe and benevolent AI.
Can everyone hear that? Is that coming through clear? Yeah, I think, Bryan, it's a little hard to hear you. And I'm going to say that... Are we going to do something with the acoustics to make that come through more clearly? Yeah. Maybe talk a little quieter and a little more slowly. And I also want to let you all know, so my name is Tiffany Kary. I am a journalist who writes about the business of psychedelics in a newsletter called The Dose, and I write for Bloomberg News and Businessweek magazine. And my expertise is more psychedelics than longevity, but I'm hoping that Bryan is going to talk to that overlap. So Bryan, take it again, maybe a little more slowly, enunciate, and tell us why you have chosen to not come here in person today.
Let me see here. We humans model what's possible based upon, in part, by what other humans do. And what I'm trying to show with Blueprint is that in the year 2023, one can meaningfully slow their speed of aging and reverse aging damage, that we are on the cusp of transforming what it means to be human. And if I can show something tangible and real and reproducible, it could help shift the aspirations as a species of what we can imagine ourselves becoming. And so my daily protocol of sleep and diet and exercise is pretty regimented, all for the objective of proving a point of what is possible in this moment with anti-aging science.
And so you say you want to show us that this is real, yet you're not here, in our real dimension at least. Tell us a little bit about your Blueprint schedule. Is it the schedule that prevents you from being here, or is it a concern about changing your microbiome, which I understand you've worked quite hard on to optimize?
Yeah, it's the entirety. Travel is really disruptive to sleep and to diet. And what we've done at Blueprint is we flipped the idea that we are accustomed to deciding what we eat and when we go to sleep based upon decisions that our mind makes. It's how we're feeling, it's what we want in the moment. And we flipped that and we said, we're going to measure every organ of my body. And we're going to ask the heart and the liver and the lungs what they need to be their best selves. And I call this my autonomous self. I basically said yes to an algorithm to run me, because it is better at taking care of my health and wellness than I can myself. And it's really a different way of thinking. If we contemplate the same way in taking care of planet Earth, we treat planet Earth like we treat our own bodies. And so I'm trying to demonstrate a fundamental shift on what is the authority of intelligence that should be influencing our daily decisions, both in our bodies and as a species.
So what does that mean for you on a day-to-day level? How often do you leave your home? When was the last time you were on an airplane? Are these things you will never do again?
Yeah, so I guess like while we're clearing up misconceptions, there's been a lot of headlines. I did, in fact, receive 1 liter of plasma from my 17-year-old son. That is accurate. And I do keep him in a bedroom in the downstairs, but it's not 10 by 10, it's 8 by 8.
I hope you're joking.
Yeah, but I guess I play with this because the headlines are pretty wild and they're disconnected from a lot of reality. I've never had a more robust life in my entire life. So we do all sorts of outdoor adventure. We're doing things all the time. It's not the case that I'm holed up in my house. It is to say, however, that Blueprint is a controlled experiment. And we're trying all sorts of things with the basics like diet and sleep and exercise. But I also recently had my first gene therapy. I also did 100 million young Swedish bone marrow derived mesenchymal stem cells. And we're trying to control as many variables as possible because we're really trying to demonstrate what is scientifically possible. It bridges nicely with psychedelics. I mean, my personal experience with psychedelics, and I had ketamine injected when we were doing a study with Kernel, the Kernel headset, and we were trying to measure the effects on the brain of ketamine. And psychedelics are maybe an invitation of how we might begin understanding the future of our existence when we have the ability to engineer existence at a molecular level. And then also on top of that digitally, it creates a new framework for existence. And then you stack on top of that this idea that aging and end of life may not be inevitable or may be dramatically continued. It changes the fundamental pillars of our society and where we're at now.
Have you experimented with other psychedelics, and do you believe in the theory that some of them are neuroplastogens or that there is such a thing as a psychoplastogen?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that.
Have you experimented with other psychedelics aside from ketamine? And do you believe that they have a role in keeping the brain more plastic as one ages? Is a neuroplastogen or a psychoplastogen a real phenomenon to you?
I'll do my best to answer that. I think I understand it. So one of the challenges that I've personally encountered with Blueprint and Don't Die is it confronts this question that people ask, why do I want to live? Wouldn't I just get bored if I live longer? And the most basic want for life is in question of the person's mind. And that really surprised me when I started doing this. And if a person is doing that, I guess they're starting at this position where they've mapped out the potential states they're accustomed to, like the thrill of an accomplishment, the sadness of heartbreak, the pain of disease. And when we populate the potential mental states, psychedelics dramatically expand the states that people contemplate as potential things they could occupy and like basically play space. And as we age, of course, we know that the brain is not as plastic as it was when it was younger, and it forecloses many things. And so in many ways, if we can imagine getting ourselves to a shift where we want life without condition, psychedelics are going to play an important role because we need to overcome so many of the biases, limitations that are just default in our minds right now.
You just brought up, why would one want to live forever? And I think maybe one of the ultimate ironies that strikes one about your situation is that you're doing this to extend your life, and yet by doing so, you must spend a lot of time thinking about your mortality, and so many of your daily actions are now to try and stave off that mortality. How is that headspace to be in?
In any previous time of being a Homo sapien, one could reasonably say, I'm going to choose to live fast and die young. I'm going to do things now in my life to trade off the remaining 10 years of my life that otherwise would have existed. That's a reasonable trade-off space one can make.
But you're choosing to live slow.
In the year 2023, I think we exist right now in service to our future selves. I do not trust, personally, my own opinions about what I want and don't want. I think my perspectives in this moment are primitive relative to what we will be. And if you think about having a conversation with Homo erectus 1 million years ago and asking them what they care about, and imagine asking them to riff with you what the species can become in 1 million years, Homo erectus would not have imagined state of play today. And I think we're in the same position. And I give our own opinions just as little credence as I do a Homo erectus. I think the evolutionary change is going to be that meaningful. And to me, psychedelics are substances that can help us bridge outside of the constraints of our mind and do this thought exercise. I mean, after that introduction, just before I started talking with all of you, was remarkable. It's 13.8 billion years that we're here. We occupy this moment in potentially the most extraordinary moment in the history of the galaxy. It's ours. And we have, on one hand, it's like, do I want a cheap thrill from this pizza and donut? Or do I want to fight for this future of existence that could be more remarkable than we have the capacity to understand? And it's really silly in the context that we choose these cheap thrills when this moment is ours to capture. And that it just is remarkable to me that we're here and we are our own worst enemies for that next step.
And for anyone who hasn't seen the headlines, I think it's $2 million a year that you spend working on your blueprint and your anti-aging regimen. Is that still true? About $2 million per year?
Yeah, the majority of the money is spent on doctors, scientific research, and protocol creation. Mm-hmm. The actual protocol is cheap. It's like $1,000 a month. And so the endeavor was to create the most scientifically accurate, clinically efficacious program ever developed in human history. And so we've developed this, and I've made the whole thing free for everyone across the entire world. And the results speak for themselves. If you look at what I've accomplished in the 3 years and what other people are achieving as well. And so it's extraordinarily cheap relative to what it's been created. And then now it's freely available for everybody.
And why have you chosen to do this just with yourself rather than, say, giving that money to an institution to do research where there would be a control group and other ways to sort of scientifically validate what you're experimenting with?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
Why have you chosen to do this experiment on yourself rather than to give money to a research institution which would do this in, a more traditional setting with a control group and things to sort of do the traditional scientific validation of some of the things you're experimenting with?
Yeah. Where's everybody at?
Is that a question for everyone here?
I mean, what I'm saying is, we're in this moment. Who's going to pick up the flag and run with this? Who's going to do things on a time horizon that makes sense for us as a species? And when I surveyed the landscape, who's working on this at what pace, nothing out there is even remotely close to moving at the speed we need to evolve as a species. Not even close. And so it seemed to me unnecessary that I throw my hat in the ring and try to push this thing forward.
What are your plans for Blueprint going forward? Is this going to be a package you're selling? I noticed you're selling some olive oil on your website. Are there going to be other products or just a plan that people can follow?
Yeah, olive oil, yes, I am selling olive oil and I make zero profit. I sell it at my exact cost. Olive oil is one of the most helpful things I do in my diet, and it's really hard to find high-quality olive oil that helps achieve those health markers. And so I've tried to solve the problem for everyone else. I mean, Blueprint is legitimately an endeavor to try to map the future of the human race. This is not a money grab. I'm not in this to make money. It really sincerely is to try to help humanity into this next stage. So yeah, I sell this olive oil. It's at cost. Anybody can get it. And I have a full Blueprint product stack I'm doing. I think it will drop in 60 days, and we're competing for dollar for dollar, calorie for calorie, the most clinically efficacious and nutritious food program developed in history, beating everything ever before. That's what we're competing for. And I hope that, and we'll do it so at a cost that's less than anything out there today. So I'm positive, like we have to really solve the basics of the species. We have to figure out basic nutrition. We need to go to bed on time. We need to realize that doing these self-destructive behaviors is bad for us. We're all just children kind of stumbling through life. And we know these things are not good for us. We do them anyways. And they're reinforced by our cultural habits and the fear of reprisal from others. So I think just getting the basics right can go a long ways.
What are you doing so far that you think is the most effective thing?
I'm sorry.
Of all the things you do, what do you think has been the most effective so far?
I'm so sorry, I can't understand.
What is the most effective thing you have done so far in your anti-aging regimen? Is it the blood work? Is it your nutrition? What is the most effective thing of all the things you do?
Oh, I see, yeah. I hope I'm answering your questions properly. The majority of the benefits are really through the basics. It's sleep is number one, because we all know that a bad night's sleep, we feel terrible and we're irritable and we don't have the willpower to do the things that are in our best interest. When we have a great night's sleep, we feel like we can take over the world. And so great sleep, and then having good foods as whole foods and getting some exercise, those are really basic good starters, and work our way up from there. A lot of people perceive this to be too much or not doable, but we are a society addicted to addiction. And it's when we can step out of that where you start seeing these big gains. I mean, for example, like some of the things I feel happy about is I've slowed my speed of aging by the equivalent of 31 years. I now age slower than 97% of 46-year-olds, 86% of 18-year-olds. So the accomplishments, I think, are really compelling for anyone who wants to do this. The benefits are real.
Is there anything you've done so far that you think has been ineffective that you would not repeat?
Sorry, one more time.
Is there anything you have done so far that has been ineffective that you would not do again?
Yeah, so I did 6 1-liter plasma infusions. I had a 20-year-old donor that was on a Blueprint diet. I did 5 from him, and then 1-liter plasma donation from my son. And from that, I had no measured difference. So we're doing some more advanced DNA methylation clocks to see if we can find any benefits. However, I gave 1 liter of my plasma to my father, who's 70 years old, and working really hard to keep his cognition. And he experienced a 13% reduction in his speed of aging from 1 plasma exchange, 1 liter of plasma. He gave 600 milliliters, I gave him 1 liter, and that benefit has sustained over 6 months time. So while in me is no consequence, my dad had a really significant change in his speed of aging.
And that was according to which measure of aging?
I'm so sorry, I can't hear.
How did you measure your father's reduction in aging?
My stepfather is currently pretty far down the path of cognitive decline. And nothing is more demoralizing than someone losing their mind. It's just devastating. And my father went on Blueprint, and he noticed that his cognition came back a little bit from doing it. And he said, "Hey, Bryan, I want you to know something. When you start losing your mind, you're not aware of it," which makes sense. He said, "I thought I would basically be aware when I start losing my mind." And so it's just like this urgent thing for all of us that health is forgotten until it's the only thing that matters. And I hope that, if we could be our wiser selves and we could build culture in a way that honored this, we'd be in a much better place than we are now.
And how does your 17-year-old son feel about this, particularly as now it turns out that plasma transfusion wasn't that effective?
He's fantastic. He has such a great sense of humor, and he's always down for all the gameplay. I hang out with he and his friends quite a bit. We do a lot of fun stuff together. And when I explain to them that the new game as a species that's here is don't die, and that the rules are, the game is just getting really, really good at don't dying, they say yes to this so fast. And I find that people, the older they get, the more they resist this new game. They'll come up with these arguments like, we're all gonna die anyway, so what does it matter? Live life, like any excuse they can make up to not play this game, don't die. But I'm really bullish that he and his friends have jumped both feet into the game of don't die. They absolutely understand it, that they're going to be much more successful with their lifetimes when they're feeling great and they have a longer time to build their skills and careers.
Have you done anything significant to your microbiome in terms of probiotics or things like that?
Yeah, the entirety of the protocol is listed on the Blueprint website of all the foods I eat, all the supplements. The microbiome is one that doesn't have a lot of scientific rigor behind it, so a lot of it's guesswork. At least my team thinks at the moment. So we do a few things like eating fermented foods. We take a few pre and postbiotics, but we're not really all that confident in the microbiome in the moment that we can do things that we can have confidence do increase health and lifespan.
Okay, I have one last question for you, and then we're going to open it up to audience questions. Bryan, do you have any vices? Is there anything you do that diminishes your lifespan or health span, but you just can't stay away from it? A cheeseburger every now and then, glass of wine?
I'm going to answer the question. I hope it's right. We do not know how long and how well we can live. It's the first time it's ever been the case. And if we can sober up in this moment, boy, the future could be a lot of fun. But like we treat Earth the same way we treat ourselves. We're building AI with the same tendencies we have ourselves. I'm not sure this is the welcoming environment we want for superintelligence.
That is a very lofty point, but I will try just enunciating that one more time. Do you have any vices? Is there anything you cheat on?
Oh, for cheating?
Yeah.
No, I think that's somehow that got into the cultural norms that it was like a good idea to have a cheat day. The idea of like eating a donut or a pizza or something sugary makes me sick. I would be sick for a day. It'd feel awful. It'd be the worst. So no, that's just gone. It's not part of my experience anymore. And I think that's probably true with most people. Is we think it's unimaginable that we wouldn't want to somehow go back to that. But we change faster than we can imagine, and we adapt to new norms that we think are impossible. It just happens to all of us all the time.
Great. Are there any audience questions? And I think we have someone who's going to run around with a mic. Do you want to go and bring it up to them? And I'll help translate if Bryan can't hear.
Mic check.
Oh.
Hi, Bryan. It's Sebastian. Quick question. How do you think politics are going to begin to interfere with the longevity movement? Politics have begun to interfere with AI. I'm curious how you think politics will begin to interfere with longevity. Hope you got that.
I think your question was about AI and longevity. I'm sorry. You guys, I'm so sorry about this.
How do you think politics will begin to interfere with the longevity movement as it's begun to interfere with AI?
I'm sorry.
Bryan, I'll try. I don't know if you can hear me any better. Do you think that politics will interfere with the longevity movement?
Yes. If someone's posing the question that I'm getting a chat message. Hi, Christina. Okay, audio super rough. Yeah, I think. I'm so sorry. I bet this is very frustrating for all of you. I'm very sorry. I was extremely excited to talk to all of you. I'm sorry that I'm not there in person, and I'm sorry about the irritation of the communication problems. What an amazing group to be among, and I guess I'm just sad to not be there with you.
That's a great idea.
Okay.
I don't have anything to type on, but so could you hear that question then about politics?
About politics?
Yeah. Do you think politics will interfere with longevity, and if so, how?
Oh. So, you know, in previous centuries, if you were ambitious, you might raise an army and conquer territory. And you play those status and power games. When we create superintelligence, the only foe is death. Human games of status and power are going to be scrambled. And so any assumption we make about what games humans are going to play, to me, just don't map to the future. I mean, for example, when an algorithm can take better care of me than I can myself, I don't want myself to run things anymore. And as algorithms get better and better, we humans are going to fully embrace them because they help us achieve our goals better and better. And so to me, the question basically says, can I construct an answer of knowing? And I think the most interesting observation is we don't know. We have no idea. And it's silly that we kind of pontificate about things we don't know. And so I'd rather build a framework of trying to act in unknown states than I would pretending like we know.
I see another couple questions at the back. Do you want to bring them the mic?
I hope he can hear me. My question is that I wanted to do your blueprint that I found online, but I was not sure if it's well constructed for like maybe a female or for different age group, because there was a lot of also like testosterone supplements. So I was looking at it and I was like not sure how can I change it so that it fits to my body. Is there any way that we can like modify it depending if you're like male or female or different age group or things like that?
Bryan, did you catch that? Does Blueprint apply to anyone other than you? Different sex, different age, different genetics?
Yeah. A member of our Blueprint team, a female, completed 90 days, and we were putting it to the test of what would a 27-year-old female body do. We did find some variations. We found some things that were appropriate for her, not for me, but they were pretty minor. The majority of the, sorry, I'm just looking at a text. Okay, the thing that was interesting is that the differences are a lot less than the commonalities. And the thing we're trying to really emphasize is Don't Die can largely thrive on basics of sleep, eating whole foods, getting daily exercise, and stopping bad habits. You, of course, can fine-tune things in a granular perspective, but those are really just tweaks at the end of the power laws of the games. And so I guess really what I think is interesting is there's no good excuse for anyone to not do the basics, or for society to not encourage those in every way possible. It's pretty common to hear people putting up all sorts of, but wait, what abouts, that really, I hear you, but they're not the primary character here in this story.
Is there another question? I think you have one. Last question.
Hi, Bryan. Can you hear me?
Hi.
Hi. I would love to thank you for the work that you're doing. I think it's really important work for humanity, and I applaud you for doing that. I know that a lot of people criticizing that what you've done. I think it's really amazing, and please continue doing that. My question is, do you find value in human body if we find a way to transfer consciousness on, let's say, a memory stick?
I feel like we're talking like I'm on the moon and you're on Earth, or vice versa. I didn't get a single word there.
I didn't hear the last bit of your phrase, so could you just repeat the end of your question? Use your mic.
I would love to know if there is a value of human body versus transferring consciousness on a memory stick and existing in a cloud.
Transferring consciousness on a...
Like memory stick or a chip.
Okay, so if we could be brains in a jar, do we still need our bodies?
Yes.
Yeah, I guess if we don't die, that's a fun discussion we can have, but we need to not die for that to happen. I mean, this is why, like, you know, when I look at the world and I try to find ideologies that are useful in this time and place, like, what do we do as a species? Like, let's just be sober for a minute. Like, we have a pretty challenging situation with our biosphere. We're building a form of intelligence that is far superior to us. We maintain annihilation level weapons with our finger on the hair trigger. You know, like, we're in a tough situation. Now, we've been okay so far, but there's no reason why that should make us feel like we're okay going forward. And so what do we do? Who's offering a framework or a path forward? And that's what I'm really trying to do with Zeroism and Blueprint, is to say that we really need practical guidance on daily decision-making that maps the future for the species. And if you try to condense it into something in its most simplest form, it's don't die. The entire 21st century is collapsed under a single two-word framework.
All right, I think we're out of time. Thank you, Bryan. Next year, we hope you'll be here in person.
Yeah,
Looking
that
even
sounds good.
younger.